What in the utter bobbins is this thing?
Ages ago, one of my viewers sent me the funds to buy one of these bad boys, because I saw it on eBay and thought, bloody hell, I need that. And I'm finally getting round to doing a video on it. So thank you, Dark Squall, I think. Where do I start?
I'm not here to start an argument in the comments about which console came with the best default controller, because we all know that it was probably the PlayStation 2, and the worst was definitely the Atari Jaguar. It was. I mean, at least the Intellivision has some charm to it. I personally think that more video game controllers should be in the shape of a phone. Makes me look like I have friends.
Here it is, a controller to take your gaming to the next level. This was made by the Japanese company ASCII, and it was officially licensed and endorsed by PlayStation. This thing was marketed as a way to hone your first-person skills on the home console, but just the PlayStation for now. There was a version of this controller made for PC users. In fact, what we have here is a result of ASCII buying the patent and design from the makers of a PC 360 controller called the Space Orb 360, and it was released in 1996. The controller we're talking about today was released a couple of years later, in about 1998.
Alright, let's have a proper look at this thing and we'll see whether or not it is indeed a central piece of hardware, which I am hoping from something that has such a massive ball.
First up, the box randomly triggers your triophobia. That's a phobia of holes. It's a nicely designed box actually, little window at the front. The price of this thing at the time of being sold was somewhere between £50 and £60. For context, a PlayStation game at the time would be costing you about £40 or a little more. That's without inflation. At that price, this thing would be costing nearly £100 today. That is hefty.
I'm not saying that this is a noteworthy controller because it costs the same, if not sometimes more, as the PlayStation 1 games it was meant to play. Like, that's really not an unusual thing, even in modern day gaming. It's kind of bullshit, isn't it? It's kind of bullshit.
So, the controller itself is not really recognisable as a PlayStation 1 controller if it weren't for the shape buttons. It does look kind of like some kind of hookshot, or a grapple.
Alright, come here, Errand. Let's go. Come here, you sexy bearded bastard.
Feels a bit weird to hold. See how it's got a curve here? It's not uncomfortable holding it like this, but it's a stretch to the start and select buttons. The L buttons you'd normally see here on the PlayStation controller are here this time. Fundamentally that isn't an issue. Would be weird maybe in a modern controller, but like I said, not really standardized controls yet, so you know, whatever. The D-pad is really nice. It's the perfect amount of springy and spongy, and that's the same for the buttons actually. These R buttons are way too close together even for my slim and delicate fingers though. The whole thing feels like it's solidly made, but let's look at this friggin' orb thing.
Yeah, if we look at it aesthetic-wise, it does look a little bit like a PlayStation 1 controller with a horrendous tumour. I mean, I actually feel like I need to book this thing into a sexual health clinic.
The whole thing is covered in a kind of firm rubber. The made-up words Spaceball Powersense are printed on the front here. Wow, I have no clue what that means. Now I know it looks like the ball is kind of grubby, but what's happening here is the rubber on it is starting to deteriorate, which is a little bit sad. But then again, this thing is like nearly 30 years old. That's the age that most people start to deteriorate. My balls aren't this smooth anymore, let me tell you. Oh, don't let me tell you that because that was massively inappropriate, sorry. Around this time in gaming, like 1996, there wasn't really standardized controls in games yet. You wouldn't always expect a shoulder button on a controller to shoot, for example, whereas that's kind of a given today. So on the surface, there's not much harm in making some madhouse controller, since the rules were pretty much unwritten at the time. And we do love a bit of innovation. And this thing does look like innovation. Sweet bauble-y innovation. It's not set up like, say, the joysticks on a DualShock controller. There isn't a point of rotation in the controller here where the root of this thing is embedded. Instead, it's kind of on a stiff gimbal with a center point inside the thing, so it can be pressed horizontally, vertically, and can be rolled around a little bit and twisted. It does feel like it doesn't want to do any of those things though. The resistance is really high. I'm struggling to see how this is going to make a first-person shooter any more enjoyable. I'm stressed out already, I've not even started playing.
And hey guys, you're in luck, because I do indeed have the original training disc that came with this thing. Because yes, you need to be trained to be able to use this controller, like a jet fighter pilot in the world's most shitty military operation. Well, I've had my morning/afternoon cup of coffee, a massive bowl of Cocoa Pops, a whole load of painkillers and half a bottle of wine. I am ready to tackle this abomination. Let's go.
To teach you how to use the ball, a little robot here gives you the world's tiniest diagram to work from. It's a standard tutorial, he just gives you instructions, and if you don't manipulate the ball the right way, he tells you to try again. But I'm really struggling already.
One of the selling points of this thing is being able to strafe, you know, in first-person games? Like that? What the shit was that? The way the ball's set up, you need to sort of move it across left and right on a horizontal plane to be able to do that. But it just feels so awkward. It's especially awkward trying to strafe to the left because you don't really have the support that you need to pull it. Then in games like the 3D flying games, strafing up and down is an option as well, and that's pure bobbins, that.
You press down on the ball to strafe downwards, which is fine, but to strafe up, you're meant to pull up on the ball. It's an entirely unnatural movement because it's too stiff for you to just do it with your thumb. You have to lift your whole hand off the controller and pop it like you're pulling out a cork. That's just the basic training. In the advanced training, this idiot has you fly through a load of rings, which is far harder than it looks, honestly. And if I wanted to mindlessly fly through rings, I'd play Superman 64. After more than 5 minutes of this, he tells me that there's a level 2 with more flying through rings, so yeah, this guy is more than welcome to fuck right off. I'm already so bored and frustrated, I may as well be on hold with my insurance provider. The instruction book and the training disc try to simplify using the ball by saying it's like your head. So like, imagine it being a tiny version of your own head on a controller. Wow, that's horrifying. But the idea is that the 2 dots on each side are either of your ears, and the part your thumb presses is the back of your head. Bloody stupid. Why do you want to think about your head being part of a controller? What if you really hate yourself like I do, and use the opportunity to wring your own neck? There's a number of modes for this thing that you're going to need to switch between, with this switch in the middle. And it does come supplied with a whole list of games that you'll be able to play with this thing, and the modes that you'll need to switch to. I noticed the game list absolves itself of any blame right off by saying these games may work best for you in these modes, and not all of these are standard, so experiment and find the mode you prefer most. It's like, we ain't gonna do the work for you. You got a long time ahead of you fondling a friggin' ball. I actually don't have that many games on that list, but I think I'm going to be able to cover each of the modes to give you an idea of what's going on with the small collection that I have. Because I'll be honest, I have much more important things to spend my money on than video games that are just going to sort of sit there on a shelf. You know, things like rent, petrol, and about £300 worth of various cheeses a week. Plus crackers. First up in generic mode, Bubsy 3D. Let's bring out the big guns right away. Bubsy 3D, one of the worst games ever made. Surely it can't be made any worse with this thing.
Oh man, I'm about to play Bubsy 3D with this controller. Holy shit, it's like putting a party hat on roadkill.
Plenty of them in each level, and if you get enough of them, you'll be in for some surprises.
Sake! This is literally the worst thing that has ever happened to me.
Oh, you thought that Bubsy 3D was an utter nightmare to play normally? Try it with this controller. Bubsy has no idea what he's doing. He's flying off in all directions without being asked to. He's constantly bouncing around like a prick. He's barely responding unless I really press the ball, which makes my hand slip, and then press the D-pad, which makes him piss off in another direction or even jump. And I'm constantly accidentally pressing these L buttons instead of the jump button because I'm wrestling with the controller just to get the idiot to run in a straight line.
Look at me! I'm a grown adult playing with this friggin' ball, wearing cat ears and dressed like a gothy marketing intern's first day. And I do need to stop bringing my fetishes into videos.
I'm honestly impressed. I thought that literally the only way to make Bubsy 3D more difficult to play would be if you used the end of your penis to press the buttons. Well, I stand corrected.
Hey, what buttons did you press?
This button, Bubsy, this one! F*** you, Bubsy. F*** you.
Legacy of Kain.
I awoke to the pain of a new existence, in a dank womb of darkness and decay.
Yeah, me too, buddy. We're only on game 2 and I'm already in intense emotional pain. I'm getting the... Get in the door!
Oh, this is woeful. Stop walking into walls, Kane. Get off the wall. Get out of the corner, you undead desk. Cut it out. I can't even get out of the first area of this sodding game. And again, the D-pad, that's fine. Why muck about with this ball? Why even have this game on the list when it doesn't even work with this thing? To be fair, once I really started to concentrate on being so careful not to tip the ball forward at the same time as pressing it forward, it did start getting playable. But it just makes no sense for a top-down game like this to even use the ball. Why is it on the list? Croc.
Am I the only person who doesn't think Croc on the PlayStation 1 is very good?
Oh, now this is a game that I swear was ruined by the controls anyway, since it's from that awkward period when 3D platforming games used tank controls. If you don't know what tank controls are, basically you press the direction buttons according to the character's point of view, not from yours, and it's bullshit. Actually, I suppose the whole pretending the ball is your head thing the instructions went on about makes the most sense for a game that uses tank controls, since you again need to think of it from the POV of the game character even though you're playing in third-person view. I have to admit I only hate tank controls because my brain really struggles with applying point of view directions to a third person character. But yeah, this is going to be an utter cluster bobbin for me, isn't it?
You really do have to be so gentle, and as long as you are, it does kind of work. But I've also noticed that it is kind of slightly delayed, just enough to send you running into an enemy or off a cliff. And of course, what do you do when you play a game like this and you see that you're about to run full pelt into an enemy? Well, you panic and you pull back, don't you? But the problem is, if you do panic and you press too hard on this thing, the whole thing goes absolutely apeshit. Playing Croc with this is the gaming equivalent of struggling with a wet bar of soap.
Now, we are really seeing the biggest problem now with this thing. It depends on the mode you're using, but if you press a direction just a little bit too hard, it might make your character jump or sprint in the opposite direction, or even just stop dead still. It makes no sense, and it adds an extra level of stress to gameplay when you're constantly primed to be walking off cliffs or plunging into lava.
And still, no matter how gentle I am being, I am having some serious problems just getting my little guy to run in a straight line. Plus, even when he does do that, he sort of starts off at a leisurely trot, like he's only just realising that I want him to get a fucking move on. Like I said before, I personally think that this is a very overrated PlayStation 1 game. Don't come at me in the comments just because I don't like something that you like, doesn't mean that I'm a bitch. There are other reasons for that. But I have to say, afterwards, when I plugged in the normal controller and played it with that, I had a newfound appreciation for Croc. So there's that.
Crash Bandicoot. Let's see how this thing deals with a 2.5D style game. Get on the box. Get up. Get on the box.
I don't understand how I'm supposed to hold this thing.
Once again, press forward just slightly too much and this idiot walks backwards. I've learned by now that the best way to play with this friggin' power bauble or whatever it is to totally ignore the instructions and instead place the middle joint of your thumb to the right of the symbol on the front. And the same actually goes for the back. You need the pressure point to be off-center. It makes it far easier and more responsive. Although it's still prone to randomly going apeshit, I was able to start approaching a reasonable gameplay experience by doing that. Driving controller mode. In the instructions it says you can twist the ball left and right like a steering wheel. Road rash. This does not work at all. Seems like the twisting of the ball does kind of slightly turn the bike to lean left and right, but not enough to not go smashing into the roadside.
Yeah, I often drive my car like I'm pinching an engorged nipple. Massive.
It's no better if you use the X button to accelerate. In fact, is it worse? And it says in the instructions to twist the ball, but you can't really do that without any effect at all unless you friggin' cup it. And the instruction book explicitly tells you not to do that, so what the hell? Wipeout. One of my favourite racing games ever. You can't ruin this one for me, Powersense thing.
Alright, well the game's not ruined, but I am very upset.
I'm really struggling with having to press the ball forward to get it to accelerate. But it does look like the turning works quite well, so let's not use the ball to accelerate and instead use the normal buttons to do that, and we'll see how we do. Alright, well the turning does work, it's just really awkward. When you twist the ball right, you turn left, which makes sense if this ball is meant to be ahead, you know, like that stupid thing in the instructions said. But it is confusing in terms of perspective, and it's confusing for me because I'm an idiot. Shooter mode 1. Doom. Okay, turning works quite well. The actual moving around, not so much. I'm just trying to get up these stairs. I played this for a while to really get the hang of it, and you really do need to be so gentle with the ball, or it just won't respond the way you want it to.
You knew that joke was coming.
So long as you make the tiniest movements on the thing, it does start being a halfway acceptable way of playing Doom. Still nowhere near as good as using a joystick, or even just the D-pad, honestly, but it's getting there. This is by far the best this controller has done so far, but if it was a good controller in the first place, it wouldn't need me to concentrate so hard on using it. I need all my concentration for the actual game itself, but instead, I'm putting all of my cerebral effort into not slipping around all over the shop like Bambi on ice. Oh, hang on a minute, demons from hell. I just need to stroke my ball in the absolutely perfect way. Just give me a minute, guys, hang on. Nuclear strike. You're supposed to be able to strafe by pressing the bauble left and right, but there really isn't a way of doing that without at least slightly twisting the ball too, which is what this mode takes to mean turning. To be precise, you'd need to have the strongest wrist in the world. And since I stopped wanking every time I'm bored, my wrists are like a sock inside the arm of a jumper, so I really suck at this. The ball is really so sensitive. If you're pressing it just to move forward, the slightest roll of your thumb will make it think you're wanting to move left or right too. It's a constant struggle against the bloody thing. Now, shooter mode 2. I've only got one game that uses this, Nightmare Creatures. It says in the instructions this mode is identical to Shooter Mode 1, but it's for games that use the L2 and R2 buttons for strafing, rather than the L1 and the R1 buttons. So basically, expect the same level of bullshittery as there was with Mode 1. Oh no, now we've got some bobbins. This is absolutely impossible. You do have to press a lot firmer in Nightmare Creatures just to get her going in the right direction, but press too far and she bounces off in the opposite direction. And strafing left and right, forget it, it's not happening. At least not when you want it to. This is an absolute joke. This game is completely unplayable now. The only thing that somewhat works is the twisting, which does turn her left and right. Everything else is just a total stack of cod pieces.
Biggest problem here is that you're supposed to move forward by pressing the ball forward on a sort of horizontal plane. But you can't really do that without at least sort of slightly tipping the ball forward, which is what this game takes to mean nosedive. Not to mention the camera angles are absolutely not having a very nice time. I mean, look at this. This reminds me of when I tried to teach my dad how to play Call of Duty.
Descent mode. A whole mode named after a game. That must mean that this is going to be absolutely distilled. Let's play Descent with Descent mode. So descenty. When I was a kid, I did play Descent quite a lot on the PC with a joystick, which is the way you're supposed to play Descent. So we'll see how this holds up. Look at that coffee that lad has there. It's got a tornado in it. Must be a Pret-a-Manger one. I cannot possibly express how bad it is trying to play Descent on the PlayStation 1 with this ball. I don't think I've ever encountered something so utterly unplayable. The instructions say you're supposed to use the ball like the D-pad, but it really is so broken. The ship is slipping around all over the place. Descent is a game where you really do have full 360 use of the ship you're driving, and that is a recipe for disaster with this controller. It does turn left and right fine, but while you're doing that, the ball usually responds to turning on a different axis at the same time and then... And once again, unless you press the ball in the exact perfect way to move forward, it also thinks that you're trying to tip the ship forward. This is an absolute nightmare. Even Bubsy 3D was easier to play with this thing.
Alright, I'm going to try a game that's not on the recommended list and just see how we go.
Fluid. No, never mind, I think I'm done here.
This thing is complete and utter baubles. Literally. It is literally a ball.
The only game where it kind of approached being functional was Doom, but I wasn't having a fun experience using it at all. It was needlessly complicated, and the position of the ball on the controller, it just makes no sense. When you're pushing away from yourself, it's fine, but the way the controller is shaped makes it tough to pull it towards you, and that makes strafing a real effort and reversing even worse. If it didn't have this friggin' bauble, it would be a nice enough controller. It looks cool, the buttons are nice, it is comfortable to hold normally, but just to use it the way it tells you, you're absolutely guaranteed to come out with repetitive strain injury. The instructions even lists hand pain on one of the troubleshooters. The solution? Stop holding it wrong. Screw you, I'm holding it exactly as you bastards told me to. My wrist isn't faulty, your goddamn balls are. And that's what I said to my ex. Oh god, I'm gonna kill myself.
Even though it does appear to be quite sturdy, and it does feel sturdy enough, there are some quite intense warnings on the instruction book.
Don't play with the cable, it's dangerous. It cannot handle heat. Don't hit it, kick it, or jar it.
What do you mean don't jar it? Do you mean put it in a jar? Am I putting this in a jar? Why?
Water is lethal for this machine. Never use it for anything other than its original purpose.
That's my favourite one. Don't use it for anything other than its intended purpose, despite the fact that it can't do the thing that it's intended to do.
So there you go, an official PlayStation controller that is just beyond bollocks. While RC is all over this thing, seems it was probably distributed by one of their offshoot companies, Age Tech. Here's this piece of crap on their website. They made a controller specifically for Resident Evil 1 and 2. Those games were listed to work with the friggin' sphere bauble power thing as well, so if that controller isn't a pile of bobbins, I will be very surprised.
I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm very much looking forward to the inevitable double entendres which are going to be in the comment section. Behave, alright you lot?